Hello and welcome to our first programmatic plenary. As you've heard, we are celebrating 10 years since the first International Fecal Sludge Management Conference and the beginnings of the FSM movement. Today we will look back at our origins and revisit the spark that lit the fire that drives us. You will notice that our distinguished panelists are all men. Yes, we have convened a panel, and we have done this intentionally. Very few women were in attendance at the first FSM conference. In fact, women comprised only about 25% of the attendance at FSM1. Gender equity in the sanitation sector is a theme we will discuss in depth at this conference. It is clear to see the South African roots of the FSM movement, and I'm not just saying that as a proud South African. In March 2011, a small but dedicated group of sanitation professionals convened in Durban for FSM1. There were about 150 attendees at that conference. Contrast that to 2019, where at FSM5, 1,300 delegates from 82 countries came together in Cape Town. We have come a long way since our beginnings, but there is still much work to be done. Attending the earlier FSM conferences, where most of the presentations were about laboratory-based pilots, research, and were mainly focused on the technical aspects, to now where we see tangible solutions that exist in the real world, there has been greater inclusion of other disciplines within the sector and the recognition of the importance of all FSM actors within the value chain. This certainly shows that we are moving in the right direction. Please welcome the FSM6 Conference Chair, Konstantina Velkushanova, as she hosts three of the original visionaries responsible for convening the first FSM conference, as they revisit the challenges and inspirations that led to the start of the FSM movement.
Hello everyone, my name is Konstantina Velkushanova. Welcome to the Origins plenary discussion. Today we are going to discuss on how the first FSM conference started, how it evolved and developed into the consecutive FSM conference series and resulted into the birth of the FSM Alliance. Our plenary members today have all been present at the FSM1 conference, and they have all had a key contribution into the development and the growth of the FSM sector over the last couple of decades. Without any further ado, I would like to introduce you to our plenary members. The first one is Mr. Jay Bhagwan. Jay is an executive manager of the key area of water use and waste management at the South African Water Research Commission, and has had played a significant role in the sector. His role has been instrumental in creating different research projects and portfolios for innovations in the sector. His focus has been on different water supply, wastewater and sanitation. And currently his primary focus on sanitation technologies of the future, technology innovation and application, and operation and maintenance. Jay has been also the organizer of the first and the second FSM conferences in Durban, South Africa. And he, ever since, has been playing an active role as a conference committee member in the organization of the next conferences. He is now one of the supervisory board members of the FSM Alliance. The next plenary discussion member is Peter Hawkins, who has started his sanitation journey at the London School of Hygiene and Tropical Medicine in 1976. And for a couple of years, he worked on different characterization techniques and studies and of pit latrines. In 1982, Peter moved to Mozambique, where he started working on projects related to urban sanitation and drainage. And he has been working as a consultant for the next 25 years in Africa, Latin America, Sri Lanka, and Indonesia. Then in 2007, Peter has been recruited by the World Bank as sanitation team manager of urban sanitation project, and he has been working in Mozambique for quite a number of years. Since 2017, Peter has been an independent consultant in urban sanitation. He has been actively involved into the organization of the FSM conferences, and he is also one of the supervisory board members of the FSM Alliance. And the next member of the plenary panel is Mr. Neil MacLeod. Neil has been the head of the Water and Sanitation Unit at eThekwini Municipality in Durban, South Africa, for over 22 years. In 2014, to recognize his excellence in his work and contribution in the field of water and sanitation, he was awarded with the prestigious award of the Stockholm Industry Water Award. Neil has been an iconic figure in the FSM field because he always had the outlook of innovation and then incorporation of studies through academia into the long-term planning of decision makers. And he's always been having the outlook of the future, how we can incorporate everything into innovation, into simplified technologies, into dignity, and into safe water and sanitation for all. Without any further ado, I would like to welcome our panelists, Jay, Peter, and Neil. Thank you for joining our session. So now, after the introduction, I would like to welcome our members and start with the first question for today, which is directed to all of you. Is thinking about the first FSM conference, what was the state of the sanitation then, and why was FSM needed? Maybe we can start with Jay.
Yeah, so let me give you a perspective. I mean, South Africa in the transition to the new democracy, started with what we call the backlog eradication. And, the Cinderella was water supply. So, for the first 10 years of democracy, a lot of attention was given to closing the gap on water. And, somewhere when we orchestrated the MDG direction towards incorporating the sanitation target, we suddenly seen this barometer and attention towards the backlogs on sanitation increase. Okay, and like many initiatives in the developing world, it sort of created its own momentum, but also started to create a lot of concerns because the objective was driven towards putting infrastructure on the ground, and no one was thinking about what's going to happen on the long-term operation and maintenance and sustainability. So, we went, as a country from about 900 on-site sanitation systems in the form of VIPs plus all other sort of rudimentary pit latrines to this barometer ticking in 5 years, shifting up to close to about 2 million systems. And these were bioreactors in our backyard that people, put in and becomes invisible without asking the question, what's going to happen to them when the pit fills up? And that became the basis of our strategy at the Water Research Commission, asking this question, and we launched a study and a survey to understand what was happening in the South African sector. Okay, and that study put out a number of alarm bells, and it got reinforced at that point when eThekwini took on new jurisdictions in their area, a lot of rural areas, and they inherited larger concentrations of on-site sanitation system brimming with problems. Okay, and the question people started to ask is what happens when the pits fill up? Okay, and I think that was the time bomb for us. It said this thing is going to explode we have to diffuse it, and it set us on the path to mainstream fecal sludge management as a strategy for the South African sector, with the understanding that, our fiscus is not going to be able to sustain new toilet building programs. Okay. And, through the processes and the science that we developed, we began to understand, more intimately the complexities that we were dealing with. And that sort of set the horse on the boat, to bolt around why we needed to mainstream fecal sludge management as a very important element in our own operation and policy environment.
Thank you, Jay. And let's move to, let's say, Peter. What is your reflection when you think about 10 years ago?
Well, 10 years ago, I'd been interested in the business of urban sanitation for quite a long time. I'd seen it around Africa, Central America, South Asia. And basically, there were two solutions. There was sewerage, which was a kind of all-in-one solution, goes in one end of the pipe, comes out the other, it's treated, perhaps. And then everybody else had some kind of self-built on-site system. And there was this kind of concept that, if you've got a toilet, you have sanitation. And also around that time, there was a lot of focus on rural sanitation and the ending of open defecation, which again was all about toilets, pit latrines. But meanwhile, we had the cities of the developing world exploding in terms of population, at horrendous rates of growth up to sort of 10%. And the services were simply not keeping track. You were getting densification, more and more pit latrines in a smaller and smaller space. And obviously, as they gradually overflowed or were badly managed, there was more and more cholera and a lot of other associated health problems. I mean, of course, there were quite a number of people that were aware of these problems and were looking at them, trying to do things, but it was all kind of isolated initiatives here and there. And when I heard about this first FSM conference, my ears really pricked up. I thought, goodness, finally, we can actually get to speak to each other and start to brainstorm and really sort out what are very difficult problems to manage. And you can only go so far with little isolated initiatives. It needs more joined up thinking, more cross-insemination of ideas to come to a good solution. And so that's why I was very excited when FSM1 happened and why I booked my ticket as soon as I saw it.
Thank you, Peter. And Neil, what is your reflection thinking about back then?
Well, back then, I think we were still all scratching to find solutions to the problem that Peter just spoke about, that you basically had two options as a domestic customer. You either had a flushing toilet or you had a pit in the ground, or you went in the bush, I suppose, was a third option. But that was all that was really available. And yet for us as a municipal public utility to provide pipe sanitation to everybody was just totally unaffordable. I think at that time it was like $4.5 billion to connect the unconnected compared to the 200 million it cost us to provide everybody with the urine diverting type toilet. So the cost drove us to realize we had to find other solutions. But the customers were telling us they don't like pits. They don't like looking down a hole in the ground and seeing what they've deposited there and smelling what they've deposited. And they wanted a clean place that was safe to use. And so we were scratching around to try and find alternative solutions. And at that time too, 2010, 2011, when the Gates Foundation started getting involved and working with us, we also started to realize that there were valuable resources in the fecal sludge. Until then, we'd always thought that fecal sludge was a terrible thing that you just kept as far away from you as possible. And so we were experimenting with ways to process those sludges, the LADEPA and the DWATS plants and all those things in Durban. I guess that's why Jay and the team, Chris Buckley and Dave Still, chose Durban as the first and the second site because there was actually something to look at the conference. But even then, we were still scratching and needed to find ways to process those wastes and process the fecal sludge. It's not like a centralized sewage works where you can get all the fecal sludge and process it. Here you have to collect it and transport it, and that was a huge problem to address. So many challenges to face back in 2011. I don't remember that FSM1 was actually called FSM1. I don't know what it was called, but certainly FSM2 was called FSM2. But that would tell us what the challenges were that we were trying to address back then.
Thank you. Thank you, Neil. Yeah, it sounds like there was a lot of challenges back then, and that was the first step at the time, just to recognize the problem about fecal sludge management and start thinking on the next steps. So speaking about Durban, and the first FSM conference being organized there in 2011, Jay, would you tell us a little bit more about the motivation behind of why you decided to organize the first FSM conference, and yeah, just to give us a little bit of insight of how the idea developed and what were your expectations back then?
Yeah, so as I mentioned, from all of these scoping studies, I mean, the science really was awesome and awed us at what we found that, over the last 50 or 60 years, on the theory and understanding of on-site systems, no one had actually done any scientifically based, evidence-based work. And, as the Water Research Commission, we chose that strategic direction and brought partners in with the experience in the form of the pollution research group to unpack this dilemma. And the science started to raise many concerns around safety, around process, around opportunity, and then also, the work unpacked that, the civil engineering mindset that we were using just made pit emptying more complicated and risky. Okay, so it had a number of challenges that the South African sector was faced with, but the large part of it is that we already understood that municipalities never had the capacity to manage several decentralized systems, not in the order of millions. Okay, it's not in their what you say ecosystem model to arrange that institutionally. So it was going to become a challenge, and we called this at that time the invisible problem. It's the issue of filling up pits. Operation and maintenance of pits were just taken for granted, from the charitable days of the international aid process. Let's say, I give someone a toilet, they will empty the toilet and they will keep using it. But in the modern world of service delivery, that's not how it works. So we set our direction towards saying that, look, let's not see it as a problem, let's see it as an opportunity and create certain aspirations around it that we could, open up the trajectory and pathway on, making this an acceptable service that possibly would become and lead towards a norm and uniform for many people in the world as we shift the technology barriers as well, because it's not that, waterborne is the kind of golden solution. If I had a very useful service on a non-sewage on-site system, even a wealthy person would have taken that up. I mean, in the many developing countries, people that have flush systems actually have a decentralized management system which they pay for because there's no sewers. So it's all about the servicing and understanding the science and bringing that together. So, with that body of knowledge, we felt that, we don't have all the answers. There were pockets of work being done in EWAG and those places and AIT. So we said, look, if we want to accelerate our knowledge on the subject and move this sector, let us have this conference. And we, with the little amounts of money we had, we put together this initiative to also bring our own local authority and professionals together to start connecting with the science and the knowledge that has been generated, but also listen to the international experiences around, how they've been dealing with the issues of fecal sludge management. Until then, fecal sludge management was behind the veil of sanitation. Okay, and we chose the name so that it did not get conflated with sanitation. There was a very strategic reason. Okay, at that time we had this vision that giving it another name would create a different trajectory. Okay, that would create a different policy platform that would move this agenda around ensuring that the long-term business of managing on-site sanitation with what we have and what we would have in the future gets streamlined and more integrated in the management, regulatory, and decision systems of our current municipal and public frameworks. And I think we've come quite far because we're starting to see that. We've seen the veils being lifted. We're seeing the national and international policies beginning to recognize that what is there on offer is creating this new opportunity and pathway.
Thank you, Jay. Yeah, that's correct. I mean, it sounds like it was the first step of recognizing the fecal sludge management as a separate subsector, not only putting it under the umbrella of the sanitation sector, because it's a lot broader, and usually it's not widely discussed openly. Everybody back then would have understood that fecal sludge management entails just pit latrines, and it's so much more than that. So also it sounds like a good start of putting all the sectors together, and it's so important to have people speaking to each other, to exchange information and knowledge, to create a community of practice. And another important part of what you're saying is creating this subsector actually resulted into the creation of the FSM Alliance. So have it not been named fecal sludge management and recognized as a separate subsector, maybe we wouldn't have had this organization today. So these are very important connections. Let me move with another question to Peter. Thinking about the situation with the fecal sludge management back then, 10 years ago, and now, what do you think there is anything that moved faster than you expected? Anything in the development in the sector, anything that you back then pessimistically thought, oh, it would take much longer, but to your own surprise, had evolved much faster than you expected?
Yes, indeed, I think there is. I mean, when I went to that conference in Durban in 2011, I've been looking on and off at this problem for 30 years, and all I was seeing was that it was basically getting bigger, and that no real solutions were really being developed. And indeed, I remember I met a person who later became a colleague, who said he'd referred to my earlier work in 1980, looking at pit latrine contents, because he'd scoured around everywhere and there was just nothing there. People were just not looking at it. And over these last 10 years, I think, I mean, as Jay is sort of saying, we're gradually pulling back the veils. Firstly, I think there's been a much greater focus on sanitation itself rather than water and sanitation. I think good progress has been made on water, particularly in urban areas, and it was becoming painfully obvious that wasn't happening with sanitation, and that as the cities were growing, the sanitation problem was rather getting worse. And that was sort of evidenced by things like, we had sanitation and water for all, which deliberately started to put sanitation in front of water. We had a sustainable development goal, which was specifically about sanitation, which had not been seen as a specific objective before. So there was really quite a fast growing focus on sanitation and urban sanitation. And then sort of taking it down another level, there's this concept of citywide inclusive sanitation, which started to develop. It came from various sources. Nobody invents a new idea by themselves. But these ideas gradually began to coalesce. And we were beginning to realize that if you have, like you have in a typical African city, perhaps where 10% is on sewage and 90% is not, if you sort out the sewage, you don't sort out the sanitation problem. And even if the people in the sewage part are living in nice houses and nice offices, there's a lot of people coming from places with poorly functioning toilets that work in those places. And you have to see that the unit of sanitation is a city. You can't just have sanitation in part of the city, because then just the rest overflows into the part where you have sanitation. So this idea of citywide sanitation that includes everybody, includes the rich, the poor, the commercial sector, the domestic sector. And this, I think it really quite radically changed the thinking. And we are now seeing big agencies, the World Bank, the Asian Development Bank, the African Development Bank, and so on, and increasingly individual governments starting to take up this idea that you have to approach sanitation in a much more holistic manner. And if you do that, then you can't dodge this huge elephant in the room, which is fecal sludge management. It's going to take many years to upgrade sanitation. It's a very expensive business. So we've got to be doing the best we can as we go along. And one of the most apparently cost-effective ways of doing that is to clean up the whole fecal sludge management chain. And people have realized this, and so FSM has become a specific issue. And it's not only about health; it's about dignity and the fact that we have so many manual pit emptying going on all around the world, which is very degrading and unhygienic, and needs. If we can send people to the moon, why can't we empty pits? I mean, come on. So this agenda has really developed and gained profile much more quickly than I had ever imagined. And as a result of that, I think also there's a lot of resources out there. 10 years ago, there was virtually nothing you could refer to. Now you can go onto the internet and there are online resources right, left, and center, lots of case studies and advice and tools. And this is something which practitioners can refer to. I think one of the reasons sanitation in the past didn't have many resources devoted to it was that it is very much a practical issue. It's not something which academics write up about. It's something that hard-pressed people are doing on the front line, and those sort of people don't write things up and produce videos and so on. But as the profile of sanitation was raised, then more of these resources started to be prepared, and a lot more is now being shared. And I think for those working in this field now, it's much easier to get a foothold into deciding the options available to you.
Thank you, Peter. Yes, if I echo what you're saying is correct. It seems like you have told that what the intention was 10 years ago to create a subsector of FSM with all the different involved stakeholders working together, exchanging information and progressing. Probably 10 years ago didn't look like it's going to progress as fast, but now 10 years later, we have a huge network of professionals working together. There's so many different aspects. We have what you said. Now nowadays, even the whole issue of pit emptying is, even the job of pit emptying is recognized in a completely different way. We have the pit emptying challenges that have been organized for a few years now in recognition of pit emptiers, and it seems like all the teams are really proud of the work they're doing, which seem something that have been a lot more challenging before. We had in the previous FSM conference the Pan-African Pit Emptiers Association was created. So there is a lot of recognition and an exchange growing of the sector, and there is a lot of evidence on that. And now I'm going to direct to Neil quite the opposite question. Thinking about 10 years ago, is there anything now that you would like to move a little bit faster and that you feel that we are not there yet in the FSM sector?
Yeah, so, if I look at the way we look at sanitation and fecal sludge management, when FSM1 was held, we talked about generally as a sector about sanitation. And the pipes and the treatment works drove the process, and fecal sludge was just an add-on. Now, what has started to happen, but not to the extent that I would be happy with, is that fecal sludge is actually driving the thinking, because we now realize as a sector that fecal sludge has a value. And so all the technology is about, well, how do we rejig the technology so that we can harvest that fecal sludge and process it and recover the resources? But the problem is that while we've been very good at talking to each other and writing papers for each other to read, we have that whole market out there. If we're going to make this fecal sludge management a success, we need to deal with what I call product safety. So we now talk about the sanitation circular economy, the fact that we will take fecal sludges and we will process them and we will harvest the value. And that's okay for us. But the chain stores and the families at home, when you talk to them about using products that are derived from fecal sludges, they have what we in South Africa call the yuck factor. Oh, I don't want to go near that. Use a face cream that came out of somebody's waste, or eat a fish that was fed with the fecal sludge protein. So that is an area where there's not been as much success, maybe because engineers and scientists are not good marketers. But until we can crack that one, we are not going to see a successful sanitation circular economy thing, in my view. And linked to that is the fact that I had hoped that by now we would have a set of standards determining product safety and processes. So in other words, we could go to the chain stores and go to the people out there that are not technically minded and say, we could guarantee you that this product is safe, like we can do for reused water, but we can't do it for these products. So is the phosphorus okay? Is the black soldier fly protein okay? And that is a big gap. And nobody's investing in that right now. So the technologies are moving, the logistics platforms are moving, the science is moving, but that's not helping us to close the sanitation circular economy thinking. That's the one thing. The other thing is that my dream in 2010, when we went to the foundation, was to say, if we are going to be successful with decentralized sanitation, we need something that's the size of a washing machine at every house that's not on the grid, that can process the fecal sludges and recover the nutrients and the energy. The most recent back-end processes of fecal sludge fit in a 20-foot container. And so we haven't, at the rate we need to, been able to miniaturize. And that is the next big challenge. How do we take those 20-foot containers now and make that same process fit into a washing machine size device? So I would say those are the key areas where I haven't seen the kind of changes that I would have hoped.
Thank you, Neil. Yeah. Although a lot has been achieved, there is still a gap in the market that definitely we need to explore and actually start more and more taking the fecal sludge or the excreta as a resource rather than a waste. I know that this conversation has been going for a long time, and yeah, we need to focus on these particulars, and then also the technologies. Hopefully in the next couple of years, we could have these dream machines, almost like washing machines, where we can press a button and all of us would be able to install them in our homes, regardless where we are in the world. So this is a very good outlook. Yes, we see that a lot has been achieved from the first FSM conference. A lot has been done. Some of the aspects exceeded the expectations, and at the same time, we see that we have so much more work to do in order to achieve the Sustainable Development Goal 6. But then not only this, but to be able to achieve sustainable fecal sludge management. So just to conclude this session, I wanted to ask each one of you to share your insight or your message to what would the next 10 years look like to you? And do you have any particular messages to share to the next upcoming generation of young FSM practitioners? What would you like to tell them, and what would you like to see happening? I know that Neil touched a little bit on this, but it would be good to go through each one of you. So, Jay?
Yeah, let me start. I mean, I'm a little bit more optimistic than Neil. What we've achieved in 10 years is very remarkable, by all standards. When you reflect back 10 years ago, there were just a handful of us, trying to sell this concept of fecal sludge management, okay? And today we have an acceleration of this whole industry. I mean, take for example, and it has a lot of parallels with, how the WRC operates. If you look back at its history, we did the same thing with biological nutrient removal. It was our contribution to mankind. And I think the fecal sludge management was a similar trajectory. I mean, we, offered it to the global community. And the result is that it's gone from a small localized event to one of the mega events in the water and sanitation calendar. It's a mega event. It's bigger than what we anticipated, and it keeps growing, and it grows in diversity that brings a different kind of knowledge base into connection. Okay, and if you look at that, and I keep reflecting after 10 years, I've never been asked to, be examiner on so many PhDs that have to deal with fecal sludge management. I have to turn them down. I'm so overwhelmed. Okay, that there's this whole cadre of youth wanting to do PhDs in finding solutions around fecal sludge management. You've seen a number of initiatives that get unwritten, that's open up the pathway to a new sanitation market, and it's becoming a force. I mean, you see what's happening in Kenya, you see what's happening in Nigeria. We've just seen what happened in India, and the second round of it. So, we've seen this fecal sludge management become national strategies, and sadly, we were the pioneers in South Africa, and we're only starting to develop our own fecal sludge management strategy at a national level with all the knowledge-based pattern, and it's just sad. But when you look at globally, and that's why I'm saying I'm so excited that it has taken off so fast and so quick that, the next 10 years is going to be more exciting, and there's going to be more growth, and there's going to be more diversity, because we're seeing more and more people from diverse industry, diverse backgrounds are beginning to come into the space and create this new fecal sludge marketplace that's looking really, really strong in its potential to bring this new value proposition to its users, okay? That offers a unique experience, that's going to offer, what we set out as a vision, that it's going to be aspirational, okay? And I think we've pulled the trigger on that from the early days that we started, that has given this pathway to the whole non-sewage sanitation technology platforms, the whole, what we would call locally based entrepreneur servicing models, etc. That is beginning to change the behavior and mindsets of people that have initially thought that on-site sanitation, required emancipation, and we offering them this new experience that's going to change this into the future. And the net consequence, like Neil mentioned, it's now opening up opportunities for a circular economy, but it's also opening up opportunities to drive a whole industrial pathway that was never there in the first place. And that's what's exciting at the moment. Yeah, thanks.
Thank you, Jay. Peter, what would be your message and what would you like to see happening in the future?
Yeah, well, I mean, building on what Jay has said, indeed, there is a new marketplace, as he's put it, coming together with the recognition of the importance of fecal sludge management. And it has many aspects because it has the technical and service provision aspects, but also the whole policies that have to recognize fecal sludge management, which previously didn't, institutional setups which also deal with that, and regulatory arrangements to deal with it, because previously it was just entirely more or less in the informal sector. So there is a lot of work to be done with that, and there is a lot of impetus into having it done because, as I mentioned, the big multilateral development banks and other important actors are now really going forward with this idea of citywide inclusive sanitation, and you will not see big sanitation projects now moving ahead without a component of fecal sludge management. So in terms of the current generation of FSM practitioners, I think there are two main, but I mean also other, but two main areas of great potential. One is at city level. In previous times, sanitation was like nobody wants to know about that. It was almost, in some cities where I've worked, it seems almost a punishment where the employees who've done least well was, okay, well, you can go and do sanitation. But now, this is being recognized, and there is really a need for properly qualified personnel to lead on this at city level. Sanitation is inherently of its place, and it needs to be managed city by city. And you can't have sort of very generalized solutions. And so what that means is that you need to have people in each urban area who are capable of providing the technical leadership to produce the good solutions. And so that's a whole kind of new category of employment available. And I think a very interesting and stimulating area to work with. And then there is also the huge potential of formalized fecal sludge management businesses, moving away from the individual with a bucket, performing a very insanitary task, and getting the whole thing organized, running businesses which, this is a business which only grows. And so there is huge potential there, I think. And, perhaps the formation of the Pan-African Potentials Association is evidence of that. So I think there is really a lot of potential. In fact, in my work, what I see is that there are a lot of people wanting now to get the right things done, but actually the big constraint is human capacity. and that there is lots and lots of work to be done by those who want to do it. And it's not just grunt work, like I said. It's you know it's much more hygienic and intellectually challenging than it has been in the past. And I think that's a huge opportunity which we need to promote.
Thank you. Thank you, Peter. Neil, what would be your outlook for the next 10 years, and what message would you like to convey to the next generation, to the young professionals in the field?
So I may have sounded pessimistic, but I'm also very optimistic. I see that there's a message here that would resonate with young people, because we're talking about sustainability. We're talking about the fact that, 80% of the world's sewage is untreated and runs into the environment. That is not sustainable. We're talking about the fact that phosphorus is a finite resource and will run out in the next 75 to 100 years. And then we can't grow the crops to feed the world. And so we need to look at the circular economy thinking. And that will hopefully drive people to realize the importance of treating fecal sludges and recovering the value that is in them. And people will change their mindset, and we'll succeed in convincing people that this is what we need to do. It's the right thing to do, if for nothing else other than for our survival as a country, as a world. So there's that side of it. The other thing is that the problem we're trying to deal with has been around, the technology problem, since the toilet was made, the flushing toilet for Queen Victoria, 160 years ago. And so in 10 years, as Jay said, we've done a heck of a lot. There's now a toilet pan that effectively diverts the flush waters away and separates the urine from the feces, which makes fecal sludge management in its subsets much easier. That didn't exist 10 years ago, and its efficiency is amazing. And it used incredibly high levels of technology to produce. And now it's going to be available for anybody. That immediately addresses the problem of not having to look down the hole and dealing with odor, because it uses less than 1 liter compared to the previous toilets of 9-10 liters. So already we've made advances there. I'm also encouraged to see that big industry, white goods manufacturers, are interested in miniaturizing, taking those 20-foot container technologies and making them fit into a washing machine. We did it with cell phones. The original cell phone was a brick, and now look how tiny they are. Even cameras, all these things we've been able to miniaturize. And I think in the next 10 years, we'll succeed in that area. So the dream of a washing machine sized device available to anybody will become a reality. And hopefully, and this is the biggest challenge, I think, is the bureaucracy that we need to overcome to produce the product safety standards, which will then close the loop and make this dream of being able to use the products that we harvest from fecal sludges return into the economy and be used productively. So yeah, I'm an optimist, and I think we've got to push this emotive side to young people. You're dealing about the sustainability of the world, ensuring our survival for more than 2 or 3 generations to come. Yeah, that would be my message.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Neil. I think we had a great discussion here, and we are approaching the end of our plenary. So I just wanted to sum up the key points of the discussion, and I find it so exciting to chat to all of you, because it provides the full story, because we already said that the FSM sector has been a growing sector. And over the last year, we had different people joining from different fields: engineering, social science, economy, even medicine. It's a great way to present the entire picture of how everything started and how much has been achieved so far. We already said that before the first FSM conference, people were doing different bits and pieces, but no, not everyone was speaking together. And now we see that there are so many networks and organizations involved into the FSM sector. The other part is the recognition of the sector as a standalone sector, And what Peter said, it's very true. It's seen as a prestigious sector to work. It's not anymore the punishment if you're not good at, or you've seen it as if you work there now, you are not recognized as an expert. It's being seen the other way around, and I see more and more young professionals that are really eager to work in the field of FSM, regardless of their origin and coming from different parts of the world. Everybody is pretty excited about the opportunities that this sector offers. The other important part was the creation of space for additional development of expertise. I mean, there are a lot of different educational programs at the moment that are offering different platforms for educational, academic, or short courses. But there is a lot of opportunity to upgrade the skills. That's something that was not so commonly available probably 10 years ago or even before that. And the development of the technologies, the dream technologies of Neil with the washing machine buttons, I think maybe it has not been achieved yet, but also a lot of progress have been done. I mean, there are a lot of innovative technologies that are already placed in the field, and they are performing very well, and we see people being pleased to use them. So hopefully we're looking in the future of achieving this dream washing machine type of toilets that we can all install in our homes. Yes, and also it was discussed, of course, we have to be proud of everything that has been achieved over the last 10 years. But we need also to look at all the work that we need to do for the next 10 years to open market spaces, to create even more space for more professionals. There was a mention about creating standards for quality in FSM. And then, yeah, widely distributing these products. And of course, reaching all these big companies, opening to the public, and not only to people that work in the sector, but anyone needs to have access or understanding of what our sector is doing and have access to these products. So that was the brief summary from my side. And I think unless anyone has anything else to mention, I would like to close the session. I realized that I didn't introduce myself in the beginning. My name is Konstantina Velkoshanova, and thank you very much for joining the Origins plenary session.
Yes, goodbye, and I hope you enjoy the conference and find out a lot of interesting things. I'm certainly looking forward to it.
Well, just to tell everyone there that y'all are the future, y'all are the game changers. So stick around, make a difference, and the next 10 years is going to be exciting. All the best.
I hope that those of you listening have been encouraged to do something about fecal sludge management. I'm always reminded that the world has 2.4 billion people without sewage. So that means we need to build 400 million toilets. Let's hope they're not Queen Victoria flushing toilets, but ones that enable fecal sludge management.
Thank you, Tina, and thanks to Jay, Peter, and Neil for sharing your insights and inspirations. If you'd like to share your thoughts, please do so in the comment section below. Or if you'd like to continue this conversation, we encourage you to visit one of the interactive networking lounges. We have another full day of programming available for you today. We hope you find the time to view the track sessions, join one of the live discussion forums, participate in one of the sector-hosted sessions, or drop in on one of the FSM Spotlight series. You can find everything listed in today's agenda. Get out there and catch up with your colleagues and make new connections by visiting one of the interactive forums or chat up one of our innovators at the expo. The competition is on with FSM Mastermind, so test yourself and take the quiz. And don't forget to vote for your favorite World Emptying Challenge team. We'll see you again tomorrow.